Anna Hoffman.
Hey friends, I'm Nikolai.
Hi, I'm Mustafa Turaman.
Hi, I'm Tanya Janka.
Hello.
And I'm excited to be the speaker at Azure Summit 2021.
It's a fantastic event that will be 11 days live streaming,
Where more than 100 speakers from all over the world.
I'm excited to speak at Azure Summit about Power BI and Synapse Analytics.
And I'm going to talk about security.
And also a Microsoft MVP for Azure.
I'm speaking at Cloud Summit about automated release of .NET application.
And the best part is that this is a free event.
Come join me live at Learn TV on September 17th.
Come join me live on Learn TV on September 14th.
Come join me on Learn TV on the 14th of September this year.
A bunch of other Microsoft and community speakers.
So if you want to learn how to secure Azure, come to my talk.
join us, it will be a lot of fun.
See you there.
See you there.
See you there.
See you there.
All right, everyone, welcome back to Cloud Summit 2021, Day 3, Part 2. I'm your host, Stephen Simon, and we are back. What an absolutely amazing day. Part 1 of Day 3 we have had. We did cover what are Azure functions. We talked about Azure SQL. We talked about Azure Purview. We did talk about .NET. We talked about Azure SQL Managed Instance. We did talk about time series. We did also talk about serverless. We covered so much in the Part 1 of Day 3. And the part 2 of Day 3 is going to be a little light as we have only 2 hours of session, but I bet it's going to be really, really exciting as we have 3 really, really amazing sessions coming up. The first one is the keynote, and the second one is followed by Christopher Harrison. He's going to talk about, I believe, the Azure Static Web Apps, and that would be followed by Lehman. She's going to talk about on her way journey to cloud. Having said that, the contests are still going on. If you are someone who's watching, we're not streaming on Learn TV. That's sad. It was scheduled, but I think they changed it last moment. But never mind. If you're someone who's joining us, okay, let me phrase it again. The contest is still on. Feel free to go ahead and ask your questions to the speaker in the comments using the hashtag Cloud Summit. And towards the end of the day, we're going to pick some random winners and take a screen grab, tag us on Twitter, LinkedIn with #Cloud Summit, and also tag us with Cloud Summit Live, Twitter and LinkedIn handles, and we'll make sure that we also pick winners from social media. Having said that, the next session that we have is by Kayla Cinnamon. She's going to keynote and talk about the Windows Terminal. I'm really excited. I was just looking at her tweet and she's telling that she's going to talk about the Windows Terminal from ideation to where they have reached now. Kayla Cinnamon is the program manager at Microsoft, and I think she was one of the featured speaker at Microsoft Build. That's where I think I found her. So having said that, let's go and invite our keynote speaker of the day, Kayla Cinnamon. Hi, Kayla. Welcome to Cloud Summit 2021.
Hi, thanks for having me.
How are you doing today?
Good, how are you?
I'm doing great. We've had an absolutely amazing part 1 of Day 3. and I'm really excited for your keynote. I think you're going to talk about Windows Terminal, right?
Yeah, I'm going to talk about how we got to where we are today and where it all started. So I think it's going
All
to be
right, so
exciting.
I won't take much of your time. I know we're only 2 minutes in your session, so you're already sharing your screen. I've added it. Everybody can see your screen, and next 25 to 30 minutes is all yours.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So thanks everyone for coming. This is a chat about how Windows Terminal was thought of, how it was created, and the steps we went through to get it to where it is today, and then also our plans that we have for the future. So first I'm going to talk about why did we make a new terminal? A lot of people ask us this question because one option is to just update the current console experience. But we couldn't go that route, and I can explain why. So that's the first piece. And then we'll talk about what went into building Terminal, designing its user experience, its architecture, and then the big event that happened, which was Microsoft Build 2019. And that's when Terminal became a real product, and we were able to give it to everyone, which is really exciting. And then I do want to touch on open source. Windows Terminal is an open source project, and it's given a lot of cool features and contributions from the community and made the product so much better. So I want to touch on that a little bit. And then we'll talk about the features that have been built into Terminal, starting from then coming to now. And then we'll talk about the features that we have planned from now into the near and also distant future, just things that we're actively working on and things that we have in the horizon as well. So first thing, oh no, my mouse died. Okay, maybe I can use my touchscreen. Oh, sweet. All right, we're gonna keep rolling. So why a new terminal? So as you may know, the current console experience looks like this in Windows, and it's either Command Prompt or PowerShell. This is what's built into Windows. Something that a lot of people may not know is the code that prints the text on the screen and gives you that title bar and the scroll bar and just the window itself. That's the same code that exists on both Command Prompt and PowerShell. So if you make an update to one, it'll update in the other. It's all the same code base. But we couldn't really make too many changes to this experience, and I can go into why. So back in about 2016, we had been getting a lot of feature requests for adding more color support, supporting emojis, changing some of the UI, things like that. So I wasn't on the team at this time. I joined in 2019, but the team changed some of the padding on the screen somewhere. And that ended up breaking a ton of people, which was not expected, but that's just what ended up happening. And when I see people, I mean like laptop manufacturers or like oil rigs in the North Sea type people, like very important businesses and companies that need to keep working and rely on this window to look exactly how it looked before. Because the way that their programs work is it's really old technology, and the window would pop up on the screen, and it has to be in the exact same place every time at the exact same dimensions. And then I think they use like a mouse and click on it. Like it needs to be very specific on the screen. So we can't really make changes to this experience. So that's kind of why we took a step back and we were like, we have to start clean. We can't change this anymore, aside from bug fixes and maintenance. So that's why the team decided to make a new terminal, and that decision was made back in like 2016, and that's when the developments kind of started from there. So designing the new experience, what went into this experience? So as I mentioned previously, the window that you see here, it's kind of made up of two components, and the best analogy I could come up with was a pie. So the filling, the inside, is kind of like the shell. So that's Command Prompt, that's PowerShell. That's the thing that's running on the inside. And then the crust is what we call conhost. And this is the thing that gives you the UI, the window that you're seeing. And that's the code that's the same between PowerShell and Command Prompt. It's all the same. So PowerShell and Command Prompt are two different pies with two different fillings, but the same crust. So that's the best way I could figure out how to describe it. So we took Conhost and then built on top of that to make Terminal. So there is Conhost living inside of Terminal today. And that comes into play later when we talk about open source. That's a really big deal that Conhost is in Terminal, but I won't reveal that yet, just yet. So that's kind of the architecture that we're working with. We're taking just the crust and building on top of it. So Terminal doesn't add new shell improvements, just Terminal improvements. So that's also a common misconception is that we're making a new command prompt. It's not a new shell. It's just the new UI on top of command prompt, and command prompt runs the exact same way, and PowerShell and other shells like that. So now that we are working with just the UI, how do we design it? What do we do? So at this point, it's 2019, and I joined the team in February. And my first job was designing what terminal looks like. What do we do with this black box? How do we make it better for people? And this was the first drawing that we made. I was just at my desk, like trying to conceptualize, like, what does this look like? What do people want to do with it? How do we want this to look? And the biggest feature request that we have gotten over many years was tabs, because as I'm sure all of you know, if you're running command prompt or PowerShell in the original console, you can't tab it together, and you just have a bunch of windows laid on top of each other if you're working in multiple environments. So tabs was the big feature request. So that's kind of what we focused on. And then we had the idea for like extensions on the top, and that's kind of the drop-down menu. And then I was like, maybe we want a favorites bar. We didn't do a favorites bar, but I was just kind of brainstorming. So there's just some cool stuff on this page, and you'll see how this drawing gets evolved into what terminal becomes later on. So I'm very glad I took a picture of this, because I've lost this notebook. So this is the only thing that I have left. But that's kind of what started in February of 2019. So terminal is built with C++, and it's using WinRT in the back end, and then the front end is laid out with XAML islands, and then we're also using WinUI. So WinUI is a sister team of ours, and they create all of the UI components and controls that are used when creating apps for Windows. So at the time in 2019, they didn't have a tab control. So we worked directly with them to design their tab view control, which exists today. And it was originally designed for terminal, but now any app, if they're using WinUI, can use this tab control as well, if that's what they want in their app. So here on the right is a Figma mockup of what terminal is meant to look like. So this isn't a real app on the right. It's just using little UI pieces. So this is the vision that we had, and this is kind of what we used to move forward in building terminal. But it wasn't just the UI on the outside that needed fixing. Once we built all the tabs and did all those things, we also needed a new font, because we were using Consolis in the new UI, and it just didn't look new. And that's because the largest thing that you see on the screen in a terminal is the text buffer. So the font is the most important thing on the screen, at least in our opinion, in terms of new visual updates, because that's what's taking up the most landscape. So we came up with a new font. We worked with a font designer, and it's called Cascadia Code, and it also ships inside Terminal's package, and it's open source too, so it's got its own repo. You can download it separately. We have a ton of different versions with powerline glyphs and programming ligatures, no programming ligatures, anything like that. And a fun little fact about Cascadia Code is we were trying to name it very quickly, and Cascadia is the inside code name for what terminal was before we named Windows Terminal. It was just called Project Cascadia. So we wanted to have that name live on. So there's a little homage to terminal in the naming of this font. And then code is just the programming ligatures that come included by default. So that's why Cascadia Code was made, and that's kind of what helped solidify and round out the entire new terminal experience. So now we're in May of 2019. We have terminal ready to ship, and we're like ready to announce it to the world. But we wanted to make it more exciting than what command line seems to be today. It seems to be like, kind of old, and people aren't that excited about it. So we wanted to make it an exciting, flashy announcement. So we made a sizzle video, and this was my other big project. Aside from designing terminal, I worked with the design studio to create this video that was announced at Build. So I have it here in the PowerPoint. I hope everything works well. I think the video will play. I'm not sure about the audio. We'll see. But this video played at Build in like a big conference hall, and then everyone was cheering and screaming afterwards. It was really, really awesome to see. So let's see what that looked like back in 2019.
with style. I know, you know, I know how to run wild. Taking over the spotlight. I'm on a roll, ready for the show now. It's go time. Watch what I do. Watch what I do. I see you looking. Watch what I do. Oh my, my, my. Oh my, my, my. Watch what I do.
So that was our huge announcement video. I hope it played well. It looked like it went okay. But everyone was cheering and screaming, and it was really awesome. And then we came back to the booth. This is us at the booth at Microsoft Build. We are here with the Windows Subsystem for Linux team, so you might recognize some people. And then I'm right there in the front. And the sign at the top said Windows Console. And I think we announced either on day 1 or day 2, but we had to leave Windows Console up until we announced Windows Terminal. And then we did this whole unveiling and took the sign down, and then it said Windows Terminal, and it was really cool. And then on the screen, we have Terminal there in the back. So this was just a really big event for Terminal itself, because then we finally announced it to the world and we were able to get it into people's hands. And also at this event, we open sourced Terminal's code base. So on this same machine right here, Dustin, who is our developer lead, he's standing right behind me in this photo. He went into our GitHub repo and hit like go public and then pushed everything live at the booth. And then that's when we went open source as well. And that's been a huge game changer for what Terminal is and how it's evolved to today. So at Terminal, we released Windows Terminal 0.1. Here's a picture of what it looked like. I think it looks very different than now. The title bar is like 3 different colors. The dropdown doesn't have icons, and we've added more stuff to it. It's definitely evolved since then, but this is what we had at Build, and you could only build it from the GitHub repo. We didn't put it in the store until July, I think, the Microsoft store. So this was like very bare bones Terminal that we announced. And when we went open source, we open sourced everything in Terminal, which includes Conhost, which is that crust of the pie that I was mentioning earlier. And that's the first piece of the Windows OS that was ever open source. So that's a really big deal, because I feel like we're like seeing the shift in like Microsoft's culture and going towards more open source projects. So this was huge. And now whenever we make updates to Terminal that relate to Conhost, that shell, the pie shell, those changes get ported back into Windows. So now people from the community can make improvements that go directly into Windows, which is really, really awesome. So speaking of open source, I do want to talk about a bunch of things that have come from being open source and a lot of features you might not have known that came from community members. So I want to say it was maybe July, August timeframe. Someone made a pull request for background images. And I think we just got into the store. Like we hardly had much of a product, and you know, our tab bar looked all crazy and whatnot. We're like, oh, we want background images eventually, but someone got way ahead of us and did the PR, and the code was awesome. So we just put it in, and then that's one of our top features today, which is really awesome. And then another really cool one was tab reordering. So this happened at Microsoft Ignite. Also in 2019, we were on the show floor, like at the booth, and then someone came up to us. His name's James, and he's like, "Hey, I think I can write your tab reordering code. Like I can do it." Like, okay, awesome. So he asked our devs a couple questions, and then he went back to his hotel room that night, wrote the whole thing, and came back the next day at the booth, gave us a demo at the booth, showed us the code, and we were like, "Yeah, do a PR." And then that's how we got tab reordering, which is at Ignite, which was really cool. So now you can reorder those however you like, which is a very useful feature. Retro terminal effects is a funny one, because so retro terminal effects, when you enable it, you get glowy text, and then you also get scan lines coming across your screen, so it looks like a retro terminal. And I like to make all my text green, like the hex code solid green, so it looks all retro. But this is not something we ever thought of, or maybe we thought of, but we weren't going to implement it anytime soon. And someone wrote the code for this, and the code was so good, we were like, yeah, why not? And you know, someone wants it, and we think it's cool, so we put that in. And then someone else later on built on top of that functionality and added pixel shader support. And that came in a few months ago. So Retro Terminal Effects was, I think, also in 2019. And then this pixel shader support, I believe, was this year in 2021. But now you can put any pixel shader in terminal and then it can do all kinds of crazy stuff. So that's been pretty cool too. Tab coloring is another one. I have a picture later where my tab is blue. So that someone added this. And then my new favorite feature that was added last release is acrylic title bar. So we ship terminal with an acrylic background. You can make the background acrylic if you wanted to, but we haven't been able to do the title bar yet. We just haven't gotten around to it. So someone made the contribution this past release. And to me, it looks a lot like the video that we just showed where like the tabs are sliding together at the beginning. That looks like acrylic, it looks glassy. And I wanted my terminal to look just like that. And now it does. And I am just obsessed with it. I think it looks so, so clean. So that's really, really awesome. And then of course, these are just like some of the top features, but there have been improvements every single release from community members, whether it's like bug fixes or improvements to our panes functionality or the command palette. Like there's improvements everywhere. Also with our documentation, it's just been really, really awesome to be open source. And I truly don't think Terminal would be where it is today without having these open source contributions. So it's been really awesome having our code out there in the public and working with the community and making this terminal what it is today. So now I want to jump into how we got from that like wacky title bar to now. So the first thing, if you've been around since day one, you'll probably remember if you launched Terminal, you couldn't drag your window around. It was like locked on that place on the screen, and you could either maximize it or minimize it or resize it, but you couldn't take the title bar and drag it at all. And this had to do with the architecture of the XAML islands that I mentioned earlier. They were laid on top of the drag area for the title bar, so you couldn't, the mouse input wouldn't go all the way through to drag it. So I think on our second or third release, we were like, you can drag your window. And it was like a huge deal, which is like basic functionality, but it was a big deal for us because we haven't been able to do that until now. So that was big. And then we also added panes. So you could do, it's like Tmux and you can do split panes. A fun tip is if you open your dropdown and hold Alt, you'll get a split pane of that profile that you select. While holding Alt, and you could also right-click on your tab and split a pane from there. I think that was added in Windows Terminal Preview. We have 2 builds of Terminal on the Microsoft Store, and I'll jump into that at the end to show you where you can get everything. But you can right-click and split tab as well to make a pane. We've added a settings UI, and this was a joint effort between us and the community. It was actually a hackathon project for the Microsoft Hackathon last year. So we built a separate XAML app and built out the settings UI with the community. And by community in this sense, I meant like Microsoft community, just people who aren't on our team. We worked with them for the hackathon, built the settings UI, and then our devs took that code and put it into Terminal and then opened it in a new tab. But before the settings UI, it was a JSON file to edit your settings, which is not the most ideal experience. And it didn't show off a lot of our features because we have a ton of customization settings. And if you just have a JSON file, you might not know all of the options you have available to you. So that was a big change, and that was released, I think, at the end of last year. Another big one is the command palette. So similar to VS Code, if you do Control-Shift-P, you'll get the command palette, and then you can do all kinds of crazy stuff with Terminal. And this one was kind of an unknown feature, like a lot of people didn't know about it. And we recently added it to the drop-down menu, and I made a tweet about it. I was like, oh, there's a hint improvement in this GIF, and I have like drop-down command palette, and then the command palette opens, and everyone freaked out because we had a command palette, not because we added it to the drop-down. So I think that was a really smart choice putting it in the drop-down because now more people know about it because it's kind of a hidden feature. And then of course, the full suite of customization. So here, this is the picture where my tab is blue. So like tab coloring, different font support, emoji support. You can have your powerline glyphs going, the background images, just tons of customizations you can do to make your terminal look like how you want. and also all of the key binding changes you can do too. So if you come from a Mac background and you're used to typing specific key combinations to make things happen in your terminal, you can change your actions, is what they're called here, to match those key bindings that you used to have on the Mac to make your transition a little bit easier. And then, of course, the biggest thing that we added for build this year was default terminal. So when we say default terminal, we mean if you type CMD or PowerShell from Run or the Start menu, it will launch in Windows Terminal rather than the original experience we showed at the beginning. And that's a really big change because now, once this is enabled, it's not, you'll never see that old experience again. You'll only get terminal. But without this setting, you have to type terminal or wt.exe to launch terminal from there. So this is really big in keeping your habits the same, but then getting the new stuff. And that's why default terminal is such a big deal. And that's currently in the Windows Terminal preview build. We haven't moved it to stable yet because we're still ironing out some of the bugs. So those are like the big features that have come from then to now, and how terminal got from that funky looking title bar that you couldn't draw or couldn't drag to this like beautiful picture I took like last week, where everything looks really acrylic and nice. So that's where we are now. So now I want to briefly touch on things that we're looking at, things that we're actively working on, and things we have planned for the future. So something that we're actively working on is tab tear out. So currently you can reorder your tabs, but you can't take a tab and drag it out into another window or attach it to an existing window. You can only keep things in the same window. So we're actively working on writing the code for this. So this should come out sooner rather than later. I don't want to promise any dates because we never know how development's going to go. This one's being worked on. Another one that is a heavy request is transparency. So we have acrylic and it's blurred, but people want full transparency, which you do get in the original console experience. So we're working on getting this into terminal and then giving you full transparency here as well. So this is also under development. It might be in PR right now on GitHub, but I'm not 100%. But we're working on this one too. And another one that I think a community member is taking the lead on, but we're helping with, is session restoration. So the Microsoft Store, we ship in the Microsoft Store and it's great because you get automatic updates. But since you get automatic updates, sometimes it will close your terminal without you asking and then update your terminal, which is not the best experience. So session restoration makes that a little bit easier, where if your terminal is closed, you can get it back to the state it was in by just relaunching it, similar to how in a browser you can get your tabs back to where they were after closing it. So that's also something that we're working on. And then farther down the line from these, like down in the future, we want terminal to be the default terminal on Windows. I'm sure a lot of people saw this coming. This would be like the ideal scenario eventually, is that terminal is, it comes shipped in Windows now. I think it comes shipped in Windows 11, and then some insider builds right now of Windows 10, I'm pretty sure. But we want it to be the default. So then everyone will be able to get terminal, and the original experience is only available if needed, but the default experience would be terminal. So this is farther down the line, but something that we are working on and is a goal. And then probably farther than that is extension support. So something like the favorites bar. We didn't want to put the favorites bar in because we think having the most amount of room on the screen buffer is most ideal. So, but if someone wants a favorites bar, you can download an extension that adds a favorites bar in. So we want to create an extension model and then do some API work and then create this way of getting extensions into terminals. These are the things that are in the near future and then like kind of far out. So this is just things that we're working on and things that you should hopefully see soon. So that's kind of everything I had for terminal. So if you want to install Windows Terminal, you can get it at aka.ms/terminal. If you want the preview version, which is about 6 weeks ahead of the stable version, it's at terminal-preview. And then once you get terminal, you can read all of our documentation or just look up certain settings if you'd like. And that's at aka.ms/terminal-docs. And then if you're interested in contributing on GitHub, if you find bugs, if you have feature requests, any of that fun stuff, our GitHub is github.com/Microsoft/terminal. And then since there's no Q&A here, feel free to reach out to me on Twitter. I'm at cinnamon_MSFT, and I'm happy to answer any questions you might have. And I'm available kind of all the time on Twitter. So thanks everyone for watching. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out, and I hope you enjoy Windows Terminal.
Wow, that was great. You know how you started with a pen and paper, you sketched it, and to now where Windows Terminal has reached. The moment you started the session, I just pressed window on my keyboard and I said CMD, and I couldn't find it. Only later on I figured out that I had to actually go to Microsoft Store and to download it. And I have it up and running. Looks very clean. Like it looks like very modern, I would say. I think the UI and UX have been worked very nicely. You did say, maybe I'm missing it. You did say that you can move the tabs, right? But I've not been able to do it. Maybe I'm missing something.
So you could, if you have multiple tabs in the same window, you can flip their order just by clicking and dragging. If that doesn't work, you should file a bug on our repo.
No, it does not.
Okay, well, if you want to file that, or I could take a look right after this.
Okay.
I'll dig into that one. It should work because that's been around for a long time.
You want me to do a quick screen share?
Sure.
All right, let me do it. Let's try. Okay.
Okay.
I'm doing my own sessions over here. You see, I have this terminal, right?
Yeah.
And I just install it, and it doesn't move.
Oh! You can't reorder tabs that are in administrator tabs.
Oh.
That is a small caveat to that. Something with like permissions and things. I'm not fully versed on that, but yeah, admin tabs you can't drag around.
Okay, that's great. I also did like that when I want to go ahead and change the settings side, it would just open in a new tab. It's not opening another new window. Usually, if you want to change any of the existing Microsoft applications, it would open your system settings, right? It would take you away, but it's not taking me away. It's all in that terminal. So it looks pretty great, and all the roadmap that you have looks very exciting. And kudos to your team. And I'm going to use this one. I've not figured out how to change the background image. I could change the color. I'll figure it out. So Kayla, any final thing you want to plug in before we move to the next session?
Yeah, I just hope you enjoy Terminal, and feel free to play with it. And I prefer Windows Terminal Preview over Stable just because the newest stuff is in there. But yeah, that's kind of it.
All right, Kayla, thank you so much for accepting the invitation. I really appreciate all your time, and we would love to host you back whenever available. And yeah, I think we do have a few questions. I think we don't have much time to take it, but yeah, we would love to have you back, and you have a nice ahead. And thank you so much.
Thanks so much.
Ta-da, bye.
Bye.
All right, with that, go ahead and please install Windows Terminal. Try it out. Looks promising. I think they have definitely worked on the UX. I would say the earlier one was okay, and this one is better. So the next session that we have is by Christopher Harrison. He's a senior program manager at Microsoft. He's going to talk about hosting dynamic sites on Azure Static Web Apps. I'm really excited to host her, and I believe many of you already know him. And if Christopher is hearing, he already knows what we are going to play. So let's welcome Christopher to Cloud Summit 2021. Welcome, Christopher. Welcome to Cloud Summit 2021.
Thank you very much, Simon. I'm so happy to be here. I need to have you just like as my personal hype machine. Like that video, just seeing that just always gives me chills. There's so many good memories in those pictures, and just So thank you very much for obviously putting that together, but also for having me and giving me this opportunity. I greatly appreciate it.
No, I really thank you for your time. I know, you are really busy. I've been following you on social media, so I really appreciate your time. And yeah, it has been a very long journey, right? And we're going to talk a lot more about it, but I think I'm already a couple of minutes in your session. So please feel free to go ahead and share your screen, and then we'll do chit chat towards the end.
Yeah, let me, I'm typically not one for slide decks, but I've got like just a couple of slides that I want to kick through. So give me just 2 seconds here as I go in, yada, yada, yada. Don't show those tips again. And I want that right there. There we go. And then I will need to change to my browser when I go to do my demos, but we can get there in a second.
Yeah, sure. Everybody can see now.
Cool. All right. Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where in the world you happen to be. My name is Christopher Harrison. I'm actually Senior Cloud Advocate now. That changed just a couple of months ago. And I'm inside of Microsoft Cloud and AI with a real focus on connecting with students and really around web dev. And so that's what leads me here today to talk about probably my favorite product that we've shipped since Visual Studio Code, or maybe even since the new Windows terminal, just to try and keep it with everything else, which I have to say, I personally use the terminal and absolutely love it. That and WSL. Are just fantastic. But in any event, let's get in and talk about Azure Static Web Apps. So I want to get in and talk about what it is, why to use it, how it works, and then we'll just get in and actually do the thing. So what is Azure Static Web Apps? Well, in marketingese, it's from code to global scale in minutes. Okay, that's great, but how about in something other than marketingese? How about in something that makes a little bit more sense? So let's talk about modern web dev. So modern web dev is typically not going to involve, or I shouldn't say typically, but quite frequently isn't going to involve the monolithic applications of the past, that going in and creating like full projects all in like one huge thing, and I'm deploying this out to my server. That's not typically how we wind up doing things in a lot of newer projects that we're putting out there. That quite frequently what we're doing is we're taking advantage of these really cool front-end frameworks and letting them do the logic, letting them do a lot of the lifting, and then we have some back-end services that are then going to be there to support them. So a lot of times I might have some services that I've written, I've got some other services that maybe I'm going out and calling, and my application then winds up just orchestrating all of those together. And so I'm using then cool front-end frameworks like Angular or React or Vue, or my personal favorite, Svelte. I'm a huge fan of Svelte. And if you don't mind a shameless plug for Web Wednesday, a little bit later on this afternoon, 3 p.m. Pacific, I'll actually be hosting another show talking about Svelte. I'm a huge fan of it. But this is a lot of how we do modern web dev. So what we want to be able to do then is to build those and host those out, what are sometimes called static web apps. You might also have heard of them as full stack applications. That's quite commonly the more popular term that you'll hear. So we want to be able to build and host those. But we also want to help streamline some of the more difficult processes that we have in hosting web applications, in writing web applications. And that's certainly going to involve authentication and authorization. Any web developer that has ever tried to start writing their own code for authentication and authorization knows the struggle that this can be. I think Django does probably the best job of this of any of the open source frameworks, but after that, this can really be tricky. So What's really cool about Azure Static Web Apps is that this is built right in. Because after all, if you're creating a web app, you're almost certainly going to need some level of authentication authorization. And this is going to be baked right in without me actually having to do anything to enable Twitter authentication, GitHub authentication, or Azure Active Directory. And if what you want to be able to do is not inside of those three, you can also bring your own authentication as well if you need to. Your APIs that are going to be running on the server are going to be powered by Azure Functions. And if you're not familiar with Azure Functions is the serverless component of Azure, and it's designed to automatically scale and grow and also be extremely cost effective, which you're also going to see applies into Azure Static Web Apps as well, that most everything, most of the cool features are actually free inside of Static Web Apps, and that the paid for gives you a couple of cool enterprise things, but for a lot of the apps that you're going to build, you're going to notice that that's going to be available for free. And then finally, last but not least, is CI/CD powered by GitHub Actions. Meeting developers right where they are, because chances are you're hosting your code inside of GitHub. So why reinvent things? Let's just build this right on top of GitHub. And so that's what's happened. And so what you'll see when we get in to actually do the deployment is we're going to have a GitHub repository. And inside of here, we're going to have two main folders. One that's going to host whatever our front end is, and then one that's going to host our back end or our API. We're then going to push that up into our main branch or maybe PR into it. And when that happens, an action will then execute to deploy all of that out to Static Web Apps. So we'll have our static content. That's going to be all the HTML, JavaScript, CSS. We're going to have our API inside of Azure Functions. And all of that is wrapped up inside of this neat little package called Static Web Apps. Let's actually do the thing. Let's actually bring this together and actually do it. So there's the last little bit of marketing, and let's get in and do the demo here. So give me just 2 seconds, boop, boop, and then I'm going to share out my browser window. Boop, boop, boop. Here we go. Okay. That should be, there we go, perfect. Okay, so here's what I'm gonna do, is I'm gonna paste this into the private chat so that way if, Simon, you wanna share this out, that's perfect. This is the repository that I'm going to use for all of my demo here. So this is a little workshop that I've built for Azure Static Web Apps. And what you're going to notice is that there's some step-by-step instructions on how to actually go through everything, the various tooling that you're going to need, and so forth. But the real thing that I'm interested in here is inside of here, we have a React app that's already built. So let's go in and take a look at this. I'm just going to open up my source folder here. And what you're going to notice is inside of my little index, there's kind of the core React where we're then going to load up our little app component, and then we're going to tell that to render. If I open up that app component, boop, 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 what you're then going to notice is we're going to use one other component here called dog list. And then I've got a little bit of code here to do the update I've got a little bit of code here for my dog list. If you want to add a message later, you can. I'll get to that in a second. But there is that. And then my dog list JSX. This is now going to do a little bit of work to display out a list of dogs here. So I've got my code that's then going to load everything up. And then down below is the display. So all of this is like core React. Now, don't worry too much if you're not overly familiar with React. That's not the purpose of the demo. That's not the goal here. If you haven't done React, if you're only using Vanilla.js, or maybe you're using another framework and you're just not familiar with React, don't focus in on that. The reason that I chose React is just because it was what I chose when I wrote this out. But everything that I'm going to be demoing will work with Svelte or Vue or Angular or whatever other framework it is that you happen to be using. So don't worry too much at all about the React if you're not overly familiar with it. Okay. So there's the React side. And then let me open up the API side. Yeah. So here is my little Azure function. And if I open this up, what this is then going to do is return out the list of dogs, Sammy, Roscoe, Artichoke. That's going to return all of that back from my server. Now, obviously, you could go ahead and load this from a database. In fact, typically that's what you would do. I wanted to just keep this a little bit easier, so I'm not calling out to a database. This is just hard-coded right into here. Now, if you're not familiar with Azure Functions gives you the ability to, well, create a function that's then going to be hosted inside of Azure Serverless. Now, the way that this works, the core thing that we have here is this context object. Now, this context object is going to give you access to everything that's going on with the request. So I can, for example, log things out. I can get the actual request object. So if there was anything in the body that was being sent up, I could then read that. And then you'll also notice that there's a little res property here. That's our response, where I can then build up the response. So you'll notice that I'm putting together a body. It's going to have an array of dogs. And then there is the list of all of the items. In my case, this is a JavaScript array, but this could also be full objects if you wanted to. So if I'm like using a Mongo database and I'm grabbing objects and I want to just send those out, I can absolutely do that. So I'm not in any way, shape, or form limited to primitive types here, that this will automatically serialize it and then send it on down, which is pretty cool. Okay, so there's my little application, there's my little project. Now, if you wanted to follow along, you could then go ahead and fork the repository. I apparently didn't set this up as a template. Let me do that real quick. Template repository. There we go. That should have been done already. Okay, cool. Yeah. There we go. Yeah, so now you've got use this template. That's really what you'd want to be able to do. So if you hit that, it'll give you the opportunity to then just make a copy of that, and away you could go from there. In my case, I've actually already got this open inside of Visual Studio Code Spaces. Visual Studio Code Spaces gives you Visual Studio Code just inside the browser. And actually, I should say GitHub Code Spaces, because that's really where it is. So this is actually just fully code spaces. So or fully Visual Studio Code. So I can even like install extensions and do all sorts of things. I can, go in and start modifying my code. I get the full IntelliSense. It will actually sync all of my settings with my local Visual Studio Code and so forth. So all really cool stuff here. So I've got all of that right here. Now, the main reason that I'm using Visual Studio Code is just to make my life a little bit easier when it comes to doing the deployment. Now, I could go into the Azure portal to do this, but I really like to use the extension. So what I want to do is deploy my site out to Azure Static Web Apps. So if you go into the extensions marketplace, do a real quick search for Azure Static Web Apps. Boop. There it is. Sound effects help, by the way. And then you could go ahead and install it. I've already got it installed, which is why my button says uninstall. But I could go ahead and install it. And now, if I go into my little Azure section, It's then going to prompt me to sign in. I've got my functions up here. I really want my static web app, so let me click sign in. And boop. I can now close the window. Well, thank you. There we go. Okay. So now let me hit the little plus here that says create a static web app. And I'm going to choose my Visual Studio subscription. And it now needs to go, hey, do you want to authorize GitHub to work with this? And the reason for that is, again, going back to the slides, all of this is built around GitHub. So this is actually going to set up an action inside of my GitHub repository. So let me click continue there and hit continue there. I can now close the window. Again, hooray. There we go. All right. And I don't know why it thinks I have working changes, but let me just go ahead and commit them. And I'm also just going to do a real quick git push. Okay. All right. So now, okay. Sorry, I kind of lost my train of thought there. I wasn't expecting that message, so it threw me for a second. You know what I'm going to do? I'm actually just going to back this up and do this one more time here. Okay. So I hit the little plus to add. Now, if you haven't already authenticated for GitHub, like you saw, it will then prompt me at that point. I've now done that. So now it's going to say, okay, well, what subscription do you want to use? So I'm going to choose Visual Studio Code. Now it's going to go, okay, well, what would you like to name this static web app? So I'm going to say Cloud Summit Demo because I'm very creative in my naming. Let me hit enter here. And now it's going to ask me to choose a region. And this is a little bit interesting because it makes it kind of look like this is going to be deployed out to one region and one region only. And that's actually not the case. What's amazing, or one of the amazing things about Azure Static Web Apps is that you will automatically get geo-replication. It will automatically do that. There's literally nothing that I have to do to enable that geo-replication. So now when somebody goes to hit my website, they're actually going to hit a server that's closer to them. That's pretty slick. And again, I don't have to do anything for that. So the location that it's asking me for here is really sort of where I want my initial deployment to go. And if I decide to set up any staging environments, where those will reside. So you will want to choose something that's close to you, but keep in mind that the production site is going to be globally deployed, which is really slick. So I'm going to choose West US 2. And now it's going to ask me, okay, well, do you want to use a preset here? And it gives me things like Blazor and Vue.js. And if you're using maybe a static site generator like Gatsby, Hugo, or VuePress, it will give you those. Or if you are maybe using some form of a hodgepodge, you're doing different things and kind of putting them all together, then you could just go ahead and choose custom. And that's actually what I'm going to choose here. So I'm going to choose custom. It will then ask me where the root of all of my code is. That's going to be inside a /, so the root. And then it's going to ask me, okay, well, what is the name of the output for all of your JavaScript, CSS, and HTML? Again, when we think about modern web dev, long gone are the days of just writing HTML, CSS, and JavaScript and having that deploy, although many would argue, and I think rightly so, that we should probably start to bring some of that back. That instead, the way that we do development these days is we use a framework, that we use Angular, or we use, we use Vue. And we're then writing in a language that the browser isn't able to understand. So we now need to convert that into something that the browser can understand. And during that build process, it's then going to create a directory. So in my case, that's going to be called build. So you would put in whatever that is here. So I'm going to hit enter. And now it's going to deploy all of that up. And so you'll notice it gives me a little button right here where I can open my actions here, and I can actually see it deploying out. So I can now see it doing its thing. And if I go to the Azure portal here, and let me go to, where do I want to be? I want where are my resource groups? All resources, and this might just take it a second here. What did I call it? Summit? There we go. Okay, there's my little static web app. Just had to go find it real quick. Okay, so here it is inside of Azure. And there's a couple of real quick things that I want to highlight while this is doing its deployment. First of all is under environment. So this was the thing that I was kind of teasing earlier about having staging environments, that every time that you create a pull request into that main branch, it will then set up a staging environment. So if you need to do any last minute testing, this will then support that, which is pretty darn cool. The other big thing is if I go under configuration here, if you need like connection strings, I can then put all of those right inside of here. And those are then read out using process.env, which is what you would do typically. The last little thing that I want to highlight, let me just go back to the overview here, is you'll notice the URL is red moss and then a hex value. So it's not that Cloud Summit demo name that I set up, it's this right here. And there's honestly good reason for that, because one of the challenges that we wind up running into is a lot of naming clashes. So it will just generate this for you. Now, if you don't like this, and I don't blame you, you'll notice right here is custom domains, and then I could add in a brand new custom domain here. So if you go in, you register your domain, this will then walk you through that whole process. Now, I think I've stalled long enough for my workflow to have completed. Yep, the light is green, the trap is clean, everything is deployed. So let me go back over here, click that little link, and voila, this is now deployed out. And so all that I did was just kind of walk through a real quick wizard, and that then deployed everything out. Now, just to highlight how we could potentially do changes, is if I go to, let's just say my app.jsx, and let's add in a message, and let's say H2, this is my update, and let's just save that, git commit am made a change, and then git push. That will now deploy out. And if I had created a new branch, I could then PR into that main branch, and that would then give me a new staging environment. But now behind the scenes, and I could actually go in and take a look here, we're going to see that deploying out. And that's really it. So that is Azure Static Web Apps. So what we saw there was how we could take a React project and how we could deploy that out to Static Web Apps. So it was already on GitHub. We'd already had that. So we just went into our Visual Studio Code, installed that Static Web Apps extension, and then we hit plus and walked through the wizard to manage that installation. So there is Azure Static Web Apps. And I believe that that's 25 minutes and 5 minutes for Q&A.
That was quick, Christopher, and I would say to the point.
Thank you. I tried.
I really liked it. I mean, you started with like, so here's my quick question. As a layman, for someone who has never heard about Azure Static Web Apps, I could relate this with as a static websites, static website, dynamic websites. So here's my very first quick question. So static websites do not have any database. Is that what it is?
So this is a great question, and honestly, it's a little bit of a misnomer. So when for the phrase static web apps, what it's really trying to get across is that the bulk of the code, or at least a large portion of the code, is actually running on the browser. And so that's sort of where that parlance of static comes into play. I agree completely that it does wind up becoming a little bit confusing there, that a lot of times when people hear the word static, they immediately assume, oh, then, there's no dynamic code. And that's actually not at all the case. That I've got server-side code through Azure Functions. I could absolutely go in and incorporate a database. And in fact, let me see how fast I can bring this up here. Yeah, I've actually got a little starter kit that like students could use for hacking and things like that. That does use a database as well, and in this case, it's using Cosmos. But yeah, so it's a little bit of a misnomer, and I pasted the link to that in the chat. But you can absolutely have like full dynamic capabilities with Azure Static Web Apps.
All right, that makes sense. So that clears my very first question. I have a couple of them. I just noted it down. You did, Christopher, you did mention that it solves all that complex thing of authentication and authorization. I definitely agree. Django is easy, but sometimes I feel Django is a little slow if I compare it. Right?
Yeah, that's fair. And I have to say, like, I love Django. I do like, we've got a full video series, and like I've created, like, I love Django, but you do have to like do things sort of like the Django way. So as long as you're okay with that, then you can create things faster than you can, I think, with any other framework under the sun. But you do just sort of have to accept that, So you've got a little bit of a trade-off of what's going to be more important to you there.
Yeah. I mean, I was just trying to look for some resources that would allow me to work with Vue and Django. They're very less resource, but somehow I figured out. But yeah, I think that they both work like a charm together. Django is good, no doubt. Let's take one question from the viewers. Jason is asking, do we need Azure subscription to install Azure Static Web Apps? If so, it will work free subscription. Okay,
that is a fantastic question. So to have an Azure subscription, you do need it's pricing. There we go. You do need to have a credit card in there. Okay. But what you are going to notice is under the pricing here for static web apps, and this is going to be in like US dollars, that you'll notice that you get 100 gigs of bandwidth, you get 2 custom domains, you get a free SSL certificate, and you get your Azure Functions, and you get a little bit of storage, about a half a gig, which will handle like many applications. I'm not going to say that it's necessarily a large amount of space, but it's like good enough for most of the applications that you're going to be working with. So all of that is available for free. Now, if you decide, hey, I do need a little bit more like bandwidth, or I need the additional storage, then you could go with the paid side. But for the sites and to the to the commenter's question, you could do that for free there.
And I see Anthony joining in. He's the program manager for Azure Functions. He just answered it. Yeah, you need an Azure subscription. Thanks for joining in, Anthony. Yep. So you did. So
I love Anthony. Anthony's such a great human being. I love Anthony.
Yeah. I did reach out to him, but it was tough to get him for this conference. Let me be honest. So Christopher, right? You now, of course, this summit is more inclined toward Azure. So you did give a demo on how you can put it on Azure. Now, for instance, you did say that, hey, this is for students, right? Sometime if someone is a Microsoft partner, they would have the subscription. But suppose they're on some other hosting, right? So is there any very drastic change in the process of deployment, or a little here and there would do well?
I mean, I really can't speak to that. So, I mean, there's different ways that you're going to deploy out to different spaces. This is how you deploy out to Azure Static Web Apps, So, yeah, I can help you there. It's great because it integrates with GitHub. Like, I can help you there. But as far as like deploying it out to somewhere else, that's going to be a little bit, obviously it's going to be a little bit different. The one thing that I will say, and I think that this is going to be true for a lot of different spaces, is that all of our serverless implementations do vary a little bit. So you will find that, code that you've maybe written for, let's say like Firebase or maybe for Heroku that's going to be running on whatever their serverless happens to be, it's going to be different than how it might look inside of Azure Functions. So you do sort of have to bear that in mind, and you might have to do a little bit of code updates if you're going to go one direction or the other.
Okay, that makes sense. And I think take an example of Heroku. I mean, people can then connect it, right? So I think people have been using it. But I also did like that you did mention about the geo selection, right? It's automatic, right? You don't have to do anything about it. So if I'm deploying from India, right, it will make sure that if you are accessing the website, it will take the servers that is near to you, right?
Correct. Yep.
Wow.
Yeah. All of that's right out of the box. And also like that the authentication that I mentioned earlier, like literally there's authentication is already available on the site that I deployed. Like I literally don't have to do anything to turn that on. That I can go into I can create a config file, and then I can start to say, hey, if somebody's going to this path, I want them to have authenticated, or I want them to be in this particular role, and then I can go in and start to manage all of that. So yeah, without having to do anything, that's just baked right in. And there's also a little bit of an API that you can access both on the client and on the server to find out like who the current user is and add any additional code that you might need.
That would be very helpful. So this is coming from the framework, or it's coming from the static web apps?
Yes. Yeah. So it's actually coming from the static web app. It's built into the context object. Let's see.
I'm sorry, I'm just asking too many questions. I want to go ahead and use your repo and make one.
Let's see if I can't find. Yeah, perfect. Yeah, so right here, this sort of walks you through it. And I'm going to go down to the second part here. Actually, this is the one that I want. Yeah, access the user information. So what you're going to notice is that there's a URL that will be available that's /auth/me that you can then call to. And then what that will give you back is this object that you see right here. So I can find out who the identity provider is, their ID, the username, and then what roles it is that they happen to be in. So I can call that from either the client or from the server. So I can access that right here. So they show you the code there for the client. And then here on the function, where is it? It's inside of, it's inside of the header. So I can just read that right from the header and access then that client principal, which will give me that same information up above.
That's great. I didn't know about that because, to be honest, this authentication and authorization really takes a lot of your time, and you just cannot get it right at the very first place. It's not possible. You cannot do it.
Yeah, exactly.
And I also really like that where you explained about that build file that you said that we are writing the code in all these new languages. It has to be compiled back to this vanilla JavaScript anyway, so the browser can understand. And to be honest, I want things to get back because front end is getting very complex now.
I agree completely, and like I openly admit this that I don't know a whole lot about Webpack, and I actively try to avoid it because these opinions reflect only Christopher Harrison, not of Microsoft.
Yeah.
But to me, like we've sort of lost the plot. If I'm having to write code to make sure that my code builds, like that just that hurts my soul. Yeah. So I will use something like Vite or Webpack, or not Webpack, Snowpack or Parcel. Like I'll use one of those auto bundlers that just sometimes will require a little bit of configuration, but for the most part they just work. And that's really what I want. Like I don't want to debug code just so I can get my code to emit. Like yeah.
I mean, okay. We are on Learn TV, right? So never mind. To be honest, even this WebAssembly thing, C# code, then WebAssembly, Blazor, then happening over there, things are getting really, really complex. but never mind. But you did give one final question, Christopher. I know we are a little over time. You did mention about you're using Azure Function because you don't want to go ahead and go to the database and just pick up the static content. Can you think of any other use case of Azure Function where we would use it?
Oh gosh, yeah. You mean like Azure Functions all up? So Azure Functions all up. The great part about it is it will automatically scale all the way up and all the way down. And you can then use that for processing those types of like burst workflows. So like the best example that I ever heard, or that I know off the top of my head, I shouldn't say I ever heard because I'm sure that other people have better ones. Anthony, who's watching, probably has better ones. But the one that sticks out in my brain was a newspaper organization. And so one of the things that they have is, their photogs will go out and they'll take a whole bunch of pictures. And they need those pictures then in a whole bunch of different resolutions because they could be used on the web. And then even on the web, you're going to have a thumbnail and mobile and full screen and so forth. And then, whatever it is that you're going to be printing out and so forth. And you don't know how many images it is that you're going to get. So trying to figure out, well, how can we scale all of this out becomes really tricky. So this is a perfect spot for Azure Functions. So they just create a job directory, all the pictures go into there, and then it calls out to Azure Functions to then rescale all of those images into the appropriate resolution. So Azure Functions is perfect for situations like that where I know that I need to do something, but I don't know how many times I'm going to need to do it. I don't know, when I'm going to need to be able to do it. And I just want to make sure that I'm only paying for what it is that I'm using. And I don't want to have to worry about like scaling and things like that. So that's really where Azure Function shines.
So that makes sense. Like you do it, but don't worry about how much is the traffic, how much is the load, just to get the job done. And Azure Function will just take care of it. All right. That makes sense. Yep. All right. So people are saying, super, Christopher.
Thank you.
Great session. Great talk. Thanks everyone. So Christopher, I know we're already 10 minutes more. Do you want to plug in about the other live shows that you do now since you have become a senior cloud advocate, right? I think you'll be involved a lot more in the community, right? I mean, you have anyway been involved, right? I see you. What are the new shows that's coming up, or what's the next thing?
Yeah, so I host a weekly show called Web Wednesday, which is creatively titled because we talk about web dev on Wednesdays. So really clever title there. And if you take a look at my Twitter, you can see me posting out to there. I unfortunately don't have a shirt URL that I can send you to. I'm still working on that. But you can find the upcoming shows there. We broadcast every Wednesday at 3 p.m. Pacific. We've hosted Anthony a couple of times. Probably time to get Anthony to come back on again to talk about like Azure Functions and Static Web Apps. And this evening Pacific time, I'm going to be bringing on John Papa to talk about Svelte. Yeah, so I'm super excited to do that. John Papa is one of my favorites. So
yeah, mine too.
Yeah, so I'm really excited to host him. But we've got upcoming talks on Razor, on Angular, and actually like building a real world project and so forth. So we've got a lot of great shows coming up. So hit me up on Twitter, and then I can point you at the right place where you can see the full list of upcoming episodes.
So I did drop the URL for the channel line where you can find all the past episodes.
Perfect.
Right?
Yeah,
right? So
that's exactly it. Yep.
Yeah, channel line MBA. That's where all things started, right?
Yep.
I see. I think I hosted a lot of speakers who have been to your show. So that's absolutely great. Christopher, it's always lovely hosting you. I think I'm hosting you almost after 1 year.
Yep.
And it has been really great. Thank you so much for your time. It was a lovely session. I'm going to go back and definitely try it with this Static Web Apps. And we would love to host you again. I'm going to hit you soon because you are a cloud advocate now. So I know you can't say no.
I can still say no, but for you, Simon, I will absolutely say yes. So yeah, absolutely. Come find me. I love being here. I love doing these things. Thanks again for bringing me on.
Thanks, Christopher. Have a great show today in the afternoon. And have a nice ahead. And thank you so much. Bye.
Bye.
All right, with that absolutely amazing session on Azure Static Web Apps by Christopher Harrison, we now move to our final session of the day, and that's unfortunately it's recorded. I don't like recorded session, but never mind. The speaker couldn't make it. Our next session is by Holly Lehman, who is the product marketing manager for Teams at Microsoft. She's going to talk about integrating her career story into the cloud journey. And if you're someone who is watching us on Learn TV, yeah, continue watching it. That's what I would say. Let's welcome Holly Lehman.
My name is Holly Lehman. I am a product marketing manager on Microsoft Teams, and I am so happy to be a part of the Cloud Summit 2021 Azure Focus. So Azure Focus, you're probably wondering why I'm here. Well, as we're going to talk about today, you are in charge of managing your own career. And when I had the beautiful opportunity to join you today, I was sitting in engineering as a program manager on Azure. But like everything else, things change. And I'm so excited to tell you how my career changed, what I input, how I drove my passion, and hopefully I can help you with your next steps in your career. So let's go. Manage your career with passion reimagined. What in the world does that mean? Well, let's talk about it. So quite often we apply for a role and it sounds really fun. It sounds right what we want to do, right up our alley. And we start the role and we find out maybe it's not exactly what we thought, but that doesn't change who you are. You applied for this role because of your passion, because of your talents, because of your skills. So how do you influence your role for the positive, and how do you drive your next steps in your career? So when we think about my own personal example, my background, believe it or not, I worked in an administrative side of the world for law enforcement. Sorry, you guys, I have a dog in the back. I apologize. I started, 8 years in law enforcement, working at a jail, working at 2 police departments, and I loved it, to be honest. What did it teach me, though? What did I walk away with? So I learned attention to detail. I learned how to follow policy, procedure. I also learned what I missed. And I missed people, and I missed having fun and engaging with people in a way that made me feel good. So I moved my career and went to hospitality. I worked at almost every front of house department you could think of, and I loved it. But I also was able to bring with me the skills that I learned from my previous role to my advantage. So the attention to detail was great. Ability to define myself in ambiguous situations was great. But now I'm in hospitality where everything's ambiguous. How do I show up differently? So I learned that being really busy and taking on a variety of projects was what I enjoyed. I found almost a calmness in chaos. So part of my career led me to being one of the first people to open one of the resorts in Vegas. And that's where, without even realizing it, I got my PM hat on. I took on a number of departments, a number of different projects, working with a number of different people in all different facets. And now moving forward, here I am, Seattle, Washington, working in Microsoft. I felt so blessed, but I also felt like I didn't belong. What in the world was I doing here? But as I grew in my career and I found that there was a need and a want for community engagement, we have this beautiful group of humans, customers, partners, MVPs, who need a bright personality that wants to drive chaos, be in events, pull people together, get people in a room chatting. So what I would say to you is, what defines you? How do you show up differently in your job when you realize what your passion is? And how did I define my role? So within Azure, my role changed just like every other role does. And I realized I missed community so much. So with a friend, we thought about starting up the North Star Partner Program, and I woke up excited again. I got to talk to all these amazing humans in technology from all over the world and share their story. That was what I was passionate about. I also fell into COVID just like everybody else. Our world's changed, every single one of us from around the world. And that change was positive. It made us think outside of the box. It made us look at our job differently. How do we show up every day in our home, doing our job to the best of our ability in this completely different world that happened overnight? Well, what's that moment going to be for you? What's that moment going to be for you where you decide to look at your job differently, where you decide to show up differently? You code, you create, you program, you develop, you test, but what else do you do? How do you want to show up differently and innovate your role and bring others along your journey to have passion for what you do every day? And how does that passion help you move your career along the road? I had to realize what I missed, what I learned, what I liked and what I didn't like. But what I knew I loved was community. So fast forward, because of this crazy situation called COVID, I feel like a lot of us started to look for the socialization opportunities on social platforms. It might be GitHub, it might be Reddit, it might be LinkedIn, it might be Facebook, whatever it is for you. But for me, I found a dear friend through the MVP community and became quite close to Isadora Ketanique. Together, we talked about our love and our passion for the community that's out there. Not just MVP, but MVP, partner, and customer. We wouldn't be where we are without each one of these communities and what they're driving for us and our services and our products. Their feedback, their investments, their thought process about how things work or why they don't, or what we need on a day-to-day basis to make our working style even better. So after we did a funny TikTok, just for fun, and we learned that people were laughing, whether they were laughing with us or at us, we didn't even care. We knew that people in the community were coming together. That led us to the idea, maybe it'd be fun to do a video series. People miss each other. That's our passion. People, community, driving unity and collaboration. And so after a lot of thought, we had this great idea, and we looked for the opportunity where we could drive people together, sharing positive stories in the tech community and their passion for community through a video series called Head in the Cloud, Heart in the Community. In this event, sure, I had to partner with someone who balanced me. What did Izzy bring? What did I bring? How could we partner together in a way that made us both succeed and the community succeed? If you're thinking of something that you're passionate about, you don't have to partner with somebody, but truly do some self-reflection into where your strengths lie, where you can grow, and how you can take what you love and integrate it, weave it in to your career. I promise it's only going to make you stronger. So what drives your passion? You know, there's a lot of people in tech that have amazing talents outside of coding, creating, programming, developing, testing, things like that. For some people, they love writing. They love inventing. They love the engineering piece of it without the coding piece. They want to provide something to the community, to educate, to drive. What is it for you? And what do you need to do to really succeed? You know, in our venture for Head in the Cloud, Heart in the Community, it was understanding, what do we need from each other? Let's really be methodical. Let's plan this out. What do we want to land? What is our goal that we want to achieve? What are the logistics of it all? She's in Switzerland. I'm in Seattle. For you, you need to think about, is it your imposter syndrome? Is it your own voice telling you that you can't do it, but we all know that you can? What is it for you that you're going to need to overcome? Is it that you want to learn a new coding language? Is it that you want to be a better blogger, a better writer? Whatever it is, take the time to really look at yourself. I'm sorry about Poppy. And really think about what is going to make you the best version of you, and how can you take that and be strong enough and confident enough to go to your manager and say, I want to do X, Y, and Z, and here's the benefit and the return of investment it's going to bring to you. And lastly, if you have ever watched our episode, there's one session where we talk about the imposter syndrome. And we talk about showing up loudly as yourself. Being a female in tech, I've been told, change my look, don't wear as much makeup. It's going to be harder for you when you walk into a male-dominated room and speak. But that's okay, because I'm showing up as who I am. And when you show up who you are, and you're not trying to fit into this mold or this reflection of what people think, you're going to show up stronger and more confident. And you're going to know that you're showing up because this is your skill. This is your passion. This is your talent. And you want to share it with everybody in the room. How do you show up every day? Are you showing up as yourself? Are you showing up as who you are day in and day out? I would ask you to really think about it as you think about your career growth down the road. Why is integrating your passion important? Well, when my role changed and I didn't have the community impact that I loved, I realized I wasn't as excited. I wasn't as motivated. I wasn't as eager. And those feelings made me really wake up and think, what can I do today to integrate a piece of work into my job that will not only bring a business strategic benefit, but also bring personal benefits to myself and do what I love, impact the community. When we thought about head in the cloud, heart in the community, the last thing I thought about was how it would integrate with work. But when I thought about how we can pull customer partner stories and share it with our engineering team, drive feedback from these incredible humans who are eager to share technical feedback, I loved it. I connected with people all over the world. I was able to really share what people want to do, is to talk about the tech and do it in a way where we get to showcase the work that these amazing humans are doing. When I thought about head in the cloud, heart in the community, it had nothing to really do with Azure or my day job in specific. But you know what it did do? It's diversity and inclusion at its finest. You didn't have to be a Microsoftie. You didn't have to work in a certain technology. You didn't have to live in a certain area. And it was a way of driving customer, partner, MVP stories and advocate for diversity and inclusion, which that's what we all care about right now. We need to lead with empathy, drive what everybody is striving for, which is respect for one another, a kindness, and bringing people with you on your journey. When I approached my manager about both ideas, he loved it. Sure, I had to prove it. Sure, I had to do the work. But if you're willing to do the work and do the research, you're going to love the outcome. You're going to feel impactful, and you're going to know that you are driving your career today, tomorrow, and for the future. Now, for those of you that were wondering, what in the world does this have to do with Azure? My goal in this session was to make each one of you feel a little better, a little stronger. Look at your passion, not just a job description. Look at what you want to go after and how you can think outside of the box and bring something different into your day job. And what does that look like down the road? What can you create? What is your love and your passion? And how can you partner with others? How can you create with others? And how can you show up more differently every single day? I want to see everybody that is listening show up with a newfound passion, your health better, your heart better, a sense of confidence, and a love for what you do. So now, whether you're Azure, whether you're MVP, partner, customer, whatever company you're working for, my ask is that you go and get after your goal. I'm Holly Lehman. Thank you so much for having me. Enjoy the rest of the summit. Take care.
Very inspiring by Holly. Unfortunately, she's not here with us. This was a recorded session, but go ahead and follow your passion. As she said, don't look at the job description. See what you really want to do, and then go ahead and get started with that. Having said that, we have come towards the end of day 3 of Cloud Summit 2021. It is only day 3 and we have to reach till day 11. I cannot even imagine. It's going to be really long. But look at the topics we have covered until now. I believe we have covered almost the entire ecosystem of Azure, and there's still about 7 days to go. And on Sunday, we have a dedicated, that is September 19th, we have a dedicated track just for students. For someone who has just tuned in at Learn TV or other places, Azure Summit.live website, this is an 11 days of live streaming, an event that is just focused on Azure. We have more than 150 speakers, 120 sessions, streaming about 12 hours each day, covering the entire ecosystem of Azure. We have had over 60,000 registrations, and until now, we have reached more than 50,000 unique audiences across our all platform. I would like to thank everyone who has been a part of this event and who's going to be. To all our speakers, to all our community members, to everyone who has asked question or dropped a comment in the chats, to the people, to my very to my two very close members who are behind the scene and helping me running this event. We are a very small team here. Having said that, I'll just take a quick 2 minutes break and we'll be back. But here's what, the day ends here, but I want you all to come back on day 4, and I want to quickly go ahead and do a screen share and show you what's in the agenda. Let me go ahead and quickly share my screen. All right. So we have concluded the day 3. We'll zoom. All right. So we have concluded the day 3 of Cloud Summit, and we now move to the September 16th. With September 16th, we first start with working with Azure SQL DB Serverless. That's by Carlos. Carlos is a Microsoft MVP. Followed by, we have a session that's by Mike Martin. He's going to talk about Azure Secure DevOps. DevOps is something that people really want to go ahead and learn, so definitely tune for his session. Then we have a session followed by Basam, who is a C# Corner MVP. And he's going to talk about how you can actually simplify cloud native application development. And all these details are on the website, that is azuresummit.live. You can just go over there and find all the details. And then after that, we have a session by Stacey Cashmore, who is a Microsoft MVP, and she's going to talk about how you can build your personal online brand using static Blazor app. So just now, we had a session by Krista Harrison where did he use the React for the Azure Static Web Apps, and here you can see we're going to use Blazor. So we have everything covered at this Cloud Summit 2021. Then fundamentals are always very, very important. So that will be covered by Dipti, who's going to talk about the fundamentals of Azure SQL database. Today, we had the introduction to Azure SQL. It's going to be the fundamental of Azure SQL. It will be very interesting to go ahead and tune into the session. And then we have a break. Actually, if you see, after every session, we have a 5 minutes break that allows you to go ahead and interact with the speakers, ask them questions. The speakers will answer all of the questions that you have asked in the chats, or you can also take it as a coffee break. And then every day we have a 30-minute break that allow you to go ahead and relax and then come back. And that's how the day goes. Then on Thursday, we have a keynote by Vishwas Lilly. Vishwas is a Microsoft Regional Director and a CTO at AIS. I believe he's going to talk about multi-cloud or hybrid. I believe he's going to talk about hybrid cloud. I'm not sure. Please tune in to know more about it. Yes, I believe it's going to be hybrid cloud, because the session followed by Vishwas' keynote is by Thomas Maurer. I know I say his name correct. He's a senior cloud advocate at Microsoft, and he's going to talk about Azure Hybrid, learn about hybrid cloud management with Azure. And I was just wondering that it's been almost an year that I hosted Thomas. Time passes very soon. This is all about that we are going to cover tomorrow. Then we have Hank Bowman. Hank Bowman is again a cloud advocate at Microsoft, and he's going to talk about what's new with Azure Machine Learning. And I'm always very excited because Azure Machine Learning is an absolutely amazing product. It has designers, notebooks, and I would say an entire ecosystem for Azure for machine learning and AI if you want to do it with Microsoft ecosystem. Then we have a session followed by Tiago, and this is a very interesting session. We don't have any session like this in the entire summit. That's on how you can actually go ahead and get certified. with Azure certifications. There are many Azure certifications. There are tracks you can find depending upon the job roles, the different tracks. Okay, and yeah, so definitely tune that out. Then we have a session followed by Mara. Mara is again a program manager at Microsoft. So you see, I think we have entire Microsoft joining us this entire in this entire cloud summit. Mara is going to talk about data replication in Azure SQL and beyond. It's a very, very interesting topic. So definitely tune in tomorrow. Then we have a session by Julie and Shafiq. They both again work at Microsoft. This session title is very, very interesting. That says how you can move from oops to oops incident response with notebooks. I personally love notebooks a lot. I started using notebooks as for Python, but I now see people use it for C#. People use it for SQL, and I think it's used for many other purposes now. It's open source, so. And I think Julie and her team has done an absolutely amazing job. Then we close the day 4 by Shannon. Shannon is again a cloud advocate at Microsoft, and she's going to talk about Azure VMware solutions overview. You know what? I actually she did tweet that many people do not know how to write VMware, and I was one of them. let me accept that. Having said that, that's all we have on the day 4 of Cloud Summit 2021. Oh, right. We have Julie tuning in. Julie says that looking forward to presenting tomorrow with Shafiq. Yeah, we all are very excited to have back Julie, and this time with Shafiq. So yeah, don't forget to tune in tomorrow for Shafiq and Julie's session at 12:10 p.m. Eastern time. That should be around 9:10 p.m. Eastern time. So yeah, that's it for day 3 of Cloud Summit 2021. But here's what, we have certain announcement to make. Not announcement, we have certain giveaways to make. So yeah, I think I should do that giveaway too. The other giveaway I'll do after this video ends, right? So here's what. So all this time we have been telling that, hey, whenever you drop a comment, now this is not possible on Learn TV. If you're watching us on Learn TV, there's no chat option. But whenever you drop a comment, ask a question to speaker or share your thought in the comments, please use #CloudSummit tag, and we're gonna pick winners towards the end, and that's what we're gonna do it. And I see many people have asked questions to the speakers, so I really appreciate it. And it's time to see who wins the Cloud Summit swag kit. And yeah, it's time to click on this draw button in the count of 3, 2, 1. Let's see who wins Cloud Summit 2021 swag kit for the day. Oh, I have to press it. I always say I need to add some sound or maybe drum rolls. All right, Akshita GE, you win Cloud Summit swag kit. Congratulations. Take a screenshot of this, drop us an email at simon@azuresummit.live, and we'll make sure that we ship you the Cloud Summit swag kit very soon. Most probably it will happen next week, next month, because we have a lot going on this month. Having said that, thank you so much everyone for tuning in. We have a couple of more giveaways to do that I'm gonna announce after this short video we play, and I'll see you the other side. And yes, the stream is going to end on Learn TV now. Ooh.
Hi, I'm Anna Hoffman.
Hey friends, I'm Nikolai.
Hi, I'm Mustafa Turaman.
Hi, I'm Tanya Janka.
Hello.
And I'm excited to be the speaker at Azure Summit 2021.
It's a fantastic event that will be 11 days live streaming,
where more than 100 speakers from all over the world.
I'm excited to speak at Azure Summit about Power BI and Synapse Analytics.
And I'm going to talk about security.
And also a Microsoft MVP for Azure.
I'm speaking at Cloud Summit about automated release of .NET application.
And the best part is that this is a free event.
Come join me live at Learn TV on September 17th.
Come join me live on Learn TV on September 14th.
Come join me on Learn TV on the 14th of September this year.
A bunch of other Microsoft and community speakers.
So if you want to learn how to secure Azure, come to my talk.
Join us, it will be a lot of fun.
See you there.
See you there.
See you there.
See you there.
All right, so I am back. We have dropped from Learn TV, but as I said, there are certain more winners to be announced, and I see people saying, Simon, I think I missed taking a screenshot. So Akshita, you can always go back. If you're watching us on Azure Summit Live, you can just always drag it, right? Just drag it back, and you can always take a screenshot. Shouldn't be a problem. Let's see. Ganesh says, Simon, you anchored the session very well. Thanks, you. All right, so we have to actually announce the winners for Twitter contest and for the LinkedIn contest. So I believe for today, we have the winner is, oops, I have to. So can you guess who's going to win today? We're giving away a lot of goodies every day, right? So for today's Twitter contest winner is Daniel. Daniel has been really consistent. He has been very active on social media, taking screenshots and tagging us and using the hashtag. So congratulations, Daniel. You win Cloud Summit swag kit. Take a screenshot of this, drop us an email at simon@azuresummit.live, and we'll make sure that we ship you the Cloud Summit swag kit next month. Now let's see who wins the LinkedIn contest. So let's see who wins the LinkedIn contest. I actually yeah. All right. So for the LinkedIn contest, we have Rupal. Rupal was attending the day 3 of Cloud Summit. Very creative. She says, "Hey, that looks pretty good. I think this is from the I don't know. It's from which session I cannot recall. But congratulations, Rupal. You win the Cloud Summit swag kit from as the LinkedIn winner. Take a screenshot of this and drop us an email at simon@azuresummit.live, and we'll ship you the goodies next month. Having said that, I always feel bad saying goodbye, but we're always coming back tomorrow. So what I'm going to do quickly is I'm also going to drop the URL for tomorrow so that you guys don't miss it up. So actually, you just have to visit azuresummit.live website every single day. That's it. Visit azuresummit.live website to tune in tomorrow. Tomorrow we start at 4:50 a.m. Eastern time zone, which is, I believe, a little early than we start the other day. So here's important. Tomorrow we start early, right? Tomorrow we start early, I believe approximately an hour and a half before. So, and the very first session is very, very important as we talk about working with Azure SQL database, that 2 serverless. So very important session. That's the very first one by Carlos. So definitely tune in tomorrow at 4:50 a.m. Eastern time. I think that should be around it. If there's some Asians joining in, or more specifically Indians, tomorrow we start at around 2:30 p.m. That's very early, right? It's almost like 2.5 hours early. We start tomorrow. So yeah, thank you so much for tuning in. My name is Stephen Simon, your host for the Cloud Summit 2021, and I'll see you tomorrow. Follow me on Twitter. I keep on posting stuff. Ta-da. Bye. Take care. Have a nice day. But yeah, here's some commercials from our sponsors.
Life in operations. It's a mix of planned and unplanned work. Operators frequently find themselves getting interrupted with an endless stream of tickets, often for doing the same things over and over again, and those tickets are often escalations to yet another team. Resolving these tickets leads ops teams to searching documentation and runbooks, looking for steps to complete routine procedures. Hopefully, the docs are up to date, and the operator has access, and they don't make a mistake. And of course, that the business can afford to wait. Wouldn't it be great if there was a better way? What the operators really need is their runbooks to be automated. Here's where Rundeck can help. Rundeck by PagerDuty is a leading solution for runbook automation. Customers use Rundeck to delegate automation to the right people in the organization. Now users get self-service access to operations that previously only subject matter experts could perform. Rundeck automates IT workflows and processes, replacing the previously manual procedures found in documentation. Rundeck doesn't replace existing automation. It makes existing automation, scripts, and commands more secure, auditable, and safe to run. Rundeck is a central hub for automation, connecting key tools and infrastructure in operations workflows. Rundeck helps teams resolve incidents quicker, avoid interruptions, and get more done, all while ensuring things are locked down and remain compliant. First responders are empowered to resolve incidents themselves instead of escalating, minimizing disruptions and reducing outage time. Operators become more productive. Developers stay focused. IT users can solve problems for themselves with the click of a button. Rundeck customers regularly see 60% shorter incidents, escalations cut in half, and 15 to 20% increase in productivity. Sign up for a demo today.
ScriptRunner, the #1 for PowerShell management. We get it. You were hoping that PowerShell would save your day, but you figured out that it is not user-friendly for non-experienced colleagues. Managing the increased demand on IT is a growing challenge, and running scripts manually is still very time-consuming and complex. Welcome to ScriptRunner, the #1 for PowerShell management. ScriptRunner runs on PowerShell scripts. It combines everything you need to efficiently manage and automate your complex IT infrastructure. With ScriptRunner, you'll be able to make it easy for your team to perform administrative tasks without any knowledge of PowerShell, have a transparent overview on all PowerShell activities, and most importantly, free up your IT resources for more relevant tasks such as innovation and development. Download your free trial now and unlock the power of PowerShell.